Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. I'm Eric Schumacher Rasmussen. I'm the editor-in-chief and VP of Streaming Media. Welcome to our closing session today, our Innovation Hour with LiveU, Zixi, and Signiant. Before we jump in to our last Streaming Media West Connect session of the day, I just have a few housekeeping notes. If you have questions for any of our speakers, please put them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That way it's easier for us to keep track of them than if they are in the chat. Also, if the live transcripts are on your screen and you wish to turn them off, you can go to the live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window, click on that, and then click on Disable Transcripts, and that will shut them off. Finally, just for attending this panel, or this session, I should say, it's not a panel, it's going to be 3 presentations and discussions. You're entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card, but you got to stick around. We'll announce the winner at the end of our session. So we'll let you know who won the Amazon gift card then. Before we get things going, though, I'd like to thank our diamond sponsors, Conviva, Limelight Networks, Signiant, and Video Guys. And Bill, our producer, has a video message to play from them right now.
NDI November. NDI products and NDI guests, including Dr. Cross to kick everything off November 2nd. Start watching Tuesdays at 3 p.m.
Register now at videoguys.com to make sure you don't miss any of our NDI November webinars. Registering will give you a chance to win one of our giveaways, including a HuddleCam HD Pro EPTZ webcam with NDI, a Telestream Wirecast Pro license for Windows or Mac, a BirdDog Flex of your choice, the New Tech University NDI class and exam, or a copy of the unofficial guide to NDI.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.
And of course, I'd like to thank these sponsors for this Innovation Hour session, LiveU, Zixi, and Signiant. These Innovation Hour sessions give us a chance for our speakers from our various companies, solutions providers, to take a deep dive into the technology that they offer and the solutions they present. So I don't want to take up any more time. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is going to be Scott Sheehan from LiveU. Scott, join us, please. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you, Eric? Good to see you again.
Second time I'm seeing you today. You were on a great panel earlier about hybrid and REMI workflows.
Yep. And we're going to weave that into how those REMI workflows play well, what we're doing with government and military applications. So I am going to jump right in unless you have, well, first of all, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm the partner account manager is what we call it. And my responsibility is nationally to work with our resellers. And, you know, the way LiveU is organized, so to speak, that means what's particular, that means is that the folks that we work with a lot of the government or pretty much all of the government and military customers that we have. A couple of resellers who manage our product line in the GSA and a few other things around the country as far as making purchasing and contracting and all of that stuff go swimmingly smooth, famous last words. So without further ado, I'm going to jump over to a presentation and make sure that I have my, what happened? Let's see. Sorry, guys, I had it here.
It's all right. We're seeing your screen. We're also seeing the thumbnails on the side, but if you just want to go ahead, you can.
Oh, okay. So you are seeing it. Good. I
Yeah,
thought
we
I
are.
set it up for that, but let's go ahead. That way I'll give you a little bit of preview of what's next. Yeah, just a little bit about us in case it is something new to everybody, but I'm not gonna read all this, but we pride ourselves on having been the company really to invent this technology of what we really now call bonded IP. And now the fame of LiveU, falls often on bonded cellular, and rightfully so. But with how things have gone with IP, we basically will transport video over internet, over Wi-Fi, over cellular, all of those at once. If all of those connectivities are given to us, we've even found ourselves now in situations where satellite will serve as a backup to cellular, ironically, where as when we got into the business, we were kind of taking that leap into giving people the opportunity to run on cellular for good reasons if satellite wasn't there or was too expensive. But we can now actually also run on satellite. But enough about that. LiveU Reliable Transport is our patent. That's the secret sauce behind bonding video to multiple connections and really driving a very high quality video signal from anywhere to any other place at any other time, and really focused on that ability to really go as REMI to the point of only taking out the camera and a LiveU backpack. And then having the studio 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles away, but then having the tools that bring video and bring audio and bring studio-like controls back to what's going on in the field, while the two production entities capture and create are sitting miles and miles apart. So all the way up to HEVC or 4K, I'm sorry, using HEVC. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. And now natively supporting 5G and now supporting remote video into cloud production environments as well. So that's a little bit about us, a few of the numbers, big numbers. We're a global company, lots of customers all over the globe, and serving up terabytes, and I think even into the petabytes of data. So main pillars, encoders. All right, so these are cellular encoders with a certain number of modems in them. Each one has a slightly different set of features and benefits associated with them. Contribution encoders, which are rack mount based encoders for certain situations, maybe in a truck, or for going from facility A to facility B, in addition to decoders. And that's the ability to receive the video and play it out. And then on the far right is the tower of solutions, I'll call it, I'll get into a little bit of those features as we go through the different workflows. Encoders, decoders, and services and solutions to create a REMI workflow production. Weaving all of this together is something we call LiveU Central, and that is your command and control based system that allows you to manage everything. It's browser based, so you can basically do that from anywhere in the field as well. The only thing missing from here, obviously, is the cellular service, and we'll talk about that. So just a quick broadcast customers everywhere. I'm not going to go through all this, but this is just to give you a flavor for who we're working with, how they use it. You can imagine how broadcast uses it. Really don't have to read all of this, but you can. I'll stay on the slide long enough to give you a chance to do so without me really talking to it. Corporate, otherwise known as enterprise, financial, healthcare, just large corporations. As you can imagine, this slide and a few of the others that were in even the military and government, really took off with COVID. And we talked about this, or Eric and I talked about this earlier this morning, but, one of the questions is, what did COVID do for the business, and, what's here to stay? And, I like to say that COVID was the trigger, the external factor that really got people, laggards or whatever, to go, we have got to look at doing video remotely. And how do we do it live and bring it remote? And it got people to move a little bit quicker. And then they found out, wow, this is pretty darn cool. It's pretty darn good. And now we're into a mode where there's been more innovation. There's been more stuff brought to the table. We continue to do that to the point where, rather than needing to do it out of health concerns, which are still a little bit out there, they're doing it out of convenience, cost, and more people being able to participate in events. And these are some of the corporate use cases. Again, stay on the slide long enough for you to give you a chance to read it, but it's what you might imagine. One of the big ones has always been saving on expensive internet drops. So a lot of events get done in hotels or trade conferences that are part of conference centers or hotels where traditionally they've wanted $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for a dedicated internet drop. And we're able to do that over bonded cellular. The education, hundreds of schools using LiveU, and for a lot of the same reasons that the other enterprises are using it. As you can see, some of the words that come up over and over again is communications. I think somebody once coined it as the most over-communicated society in the world. But communications and just getting your message out, controlling your message, working with your customers, your employees, whatever it might be, but that ability to essentially do remote video. Sports is huge, as you might imagine, and I've got a nice case study that I'll share in a bit. But here's some of the use cases for sports. Military and government, one of the big reasons why we're here today. And it really is a kind of in our case, a who's who: the Air Force, Marines, Army, the United States Customs and Border Patrol. That's at the military level and, kind of the government level. But it also goes into, city, state, federal usage or whatever. I mean, think about like small peg stations on the government side. You've got a fairly low budget, and you've been doing the town hall, and you got all the production equipment there when everybody comes out for the town hall meeting or whatever it is. But then the mayor wants to do a ribbon cutting ceremony downtown. And in the past, the team was challenged with breaking all that stuff down. Maybe they got 5-packs ready to go, maybe they don't, but you got to take all that equipment out. And can you really capture the live moment in that situation? Not really. It's kind of a staged remote moment. But if you really want to get it now and be able to do it, you grab a LiveU backpack, you grab a camera, and the studio stays at home and everything gets done there. So it's really opened up the doors for the smaller city, state, county government people to, bring more value to what they do on their level. As far as the military applications, some of the bigger ones, I want to hold that thought until the end to talk a little bit more about how we're used there. By the way, we covered Blue Origin. So the interview when they landed with Bezos and Shatner, that was LiveU, carrying that entire feed from there as well. So some really cool stuff that we're doing out there. And these are some of the use cases. Surveillance, somewhat. It's a lot of people, that's the first thing that they jump to, but it's really more about emergency communications. In the case of the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, those 8 sectors along the border. Previously, people had to travel the chief of sector, the El Paso sector, or whatever it might be. We have to drive like 3 hours to go to a studio and basically deliver a 20-minute, whatever update on whatever was going on. And now what they're able to do is just basically be right on site and, carry all that back. It's produced in the Reagan Building in Washington, D.C. under the Department of Homeland Security. So a lot of really cool things. Emergency is pretty cool. I think you probably saw on one of the slides, fire, police. So imagine, and one of the ones that we really like is, in an ambulance. So, a emergency is happening. A patient is being brought to the hospital in an emergency vehicle, and we're transmitting, via a bonded cellular into the hospital so that when the doctor shows up, or when the patient shows up, the doctor is already aware of what's going on. Here's the flow. Basically, we talked about it. The only thing I didn't talk about was the carriers in between. But you got your field users, you got your receiving end, and then you've got cellular, you got internet, you got Wi-Fi. Here's the techie stuff. We're doing packet ordering, error correction, adaptive bitrate following, all this stuff to really give a very high quality video signal, point A to point B, create here, produce there. This is the lineup, and for anybody that's interested, we can go into each one of these a little bit deeper. 300, 600, 800, they all got different features and benefits. Those are the field units. These are the rack mount units I talked about, fixed facilities and trucks. Little bit of, it's 300, 600. Again, if we have more time, we could go a little bit of these deeper, but we can always set up, a call. The 800 is our latest. And what's cool about this, you see the 4 SDI inputs. We can literally take 4 camera feeds from a single unit back to your studio all at once. Multi-camera, 10-bit HDR, 4K, all the way up, native 5G. And here's the things we call them Pro 2, Pro 4. You see the 4 green cables. You got 4 feeds coming in, and we're bringing 4 feeds back on one encoder. A little bit of a cost savings. Extender, you get into those tough situations, we can get you another 10 miles to the cellular towers. We actually get hooked up on helicopters carrying the signal from tough places. The field unit can talk wirelessly to the extender. The extender carries the video signal. Servers, not a lot of exciting things here. I guess the only thing to talk about is support for 4K on the 4000 and a cloud-based server as well. You don't need a physical server, which you see here in your rack, but you do get SDI, NDI, RTMP. You get all those outputs from a physical server, whereas your cloud server is going to be restricted to RTMP. Central, I talked a little bit about it. I'm rolling a little quick because Eric's giving me the let's go. Let me jump down. These are all, I'm just going to roll through. Video return. You got to get video back to the field. Tally light. You want to be able to see which feed from which camera's live. Audio connect. You got to have two-way comms. You want to have a camera control from the studio out to a camera in the field. You got an IP pipe, we call it, for basically controlling cameras. Data bridge, you want to turn your unit into an Uber hotspot, transmit data. The 800 will transmit data and video at the same time. So these are some of the, again, I'm rolling quick. I wanted to talk a little bit about sports, and for my buddy from Boston over there. Now, the Red Sox used to go down to do spring training with all this stuff. Satellite trucks, very, very, very expensive. Now they basically go with LiveU packs. They produce the entire spring training games from Boston and they're basically 75% cost savings, and they're doing the entire spring training from there. Here's an enterprise thing. Here's LiveU being used in the production facility of Toyota, so that they're going around, they're doing QA, they're doing a plant tour, this and that, whatever. They got 8 other plants around the country and in Mexico and Canada. They don't have to go anymore. They can sit in the comfort of their own other facility and watch as this particular plant tour is going on. So that's that. Back to the military and government applications. I already talked about U.S. Customs and Border. I really can't get into a lot of what the military is doing. Some of it is just public affairs. And then some of it is very highly classified stuff. That we're doing with the military, where they need to basically go, I need to show what's going on here to a bunch of people over here, and both of them are sitting in very highly classified areas, and we're able to We just did one for the United States Army down in Virginia. All I can say is it has to do with covering Marine 1 and Marine 2, and that's about as far as I can go. But the point of that is, and then I'll let this go, is we've also passed tons and tons of security attacks, things like that. We've gotten through security. Sometimes we'll set up a dedicated LAN, an internet line or whatever it might be, so you're not on the main network. But we've been through all of this with the government and the military applications. So sorry for the speed talking there. Tried to get to a lot of information and keep Eric happy at the same time.
Oh, hey, I appreciate that. That was a tremendous job of getting through 50 slides in 17 minutes. And it's great to hear people talk a bit about government and military applications, because as you said, so many of them you can't talk about at all. And so it's an area that's somewhat undercovered and underserved by streaming media, to be honest with you, because I have all these great conversations at NAB and IBC about, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Can you talk about it? No, we can't. So good to see what LiveU is doing in the government and military space. And thanks so much for sharing your information, Scott. Maybe you could pop your email address in the chat so that if people want to get in touch, they can do so.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott. And moving on, our next presenter is Eric Bolton from Zixi. Eric, are you out there?
I am here, Eric. Nice to see you. And thank you very much, Scott. That was very interesting.
And you today are going to talk about the business case for IP transport, if I am correct.
I was just going to say one last thing, Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott.
To Eric Bolton, he's only giving me compliments because I mentioned the Red Sox. That's why he's got that whole Boston.
I'm not going to argue that anything that's positive for the Red Sox automatically won my vote.
Well, Eric, then I will pass the mic and the controls over to you.
All right, great. Let me do the share thing. Appreciate the time and get us from the beginning. All right, how do we look?
Looking good.
Great, appreciate it. So, interesting IP discussion. A lot of folks coming at this from live contribution, file transfer, and Zixi as a software-defined live video platform. So I'm Eric Bolton. I'm the head of business development for Zixi. I've been with the company for a bit and wanted to talk today. We're in a super interesting time as an industry, and we sort of just heard a bit about the edge. We're going to hear a little bit more about how VOD and other file assets. But in Zixi's world, we live in a live event, occasional use set of use cases. And we have seen a massive tectonic shift in our main clients, who range from many technical partners. We have over 300 integrated partners, service providers who service the ultimate client, which is the large media company. Those large media companies are under a number of stresses, which we will outline. But fundamentally, it is a shift that you see in Fortune 500, and you'll see it in Media 100 as well. The requirement of agility, the ability, especially in television, to unwind delivery from infrastructure, that certain infrastructures, if they're going to satellite, international, to cable, different head ends, MSOs, those have different departments, those have different rights and different elements that control them. This cloud adoption is probably around the 10% mark and just going up, which is in lockstep with the Global 1000. And we put 5G in here for a very big reason. We're very involved in it, but it's an addition as an entirely different network. And the investments, which we'll highlight, that are going into this are going to be tremendous. And they're going to impact production, signal acquisition, and ultimately delivery, which we think will catch some by surprise. Once the world is in a software-defined solution, then interesting things become, and it was always going to be IP, and this has moved. And this is where you have much more visibility for an industry of 70, 80 years, where telemetry was based on net return and say what went to master control and came back to the truck. How do I know that happened? Autonomous operations are going to become critical. The live television was always hard. Digital live television, as it manages the Legacy and traditional models in concert with OTT and direct to consumer, much more complex. Need to increase automation because operational folks have far more work in front of them. They need a force multiplier at their disposal. And traditional engineering resources, whether they're network, video, or broadcast engineers, are scarce and not scalable. And finally, we're just at the opening stages of this journey in terms of what we're going to learn from the insights of what we see at an atomic level on that data, the telemetry, and what do they mean in terms of how we operate. And ultimately, we as an industry deliver a far better quality of experience to all the audiences out there that we make our living from. So what is driving the move to IP right now? As I said, you've got some good slides and you can see fundamentally we were already on a track, and the pandemic and COVID tailwinds merely pressed us on a path we were well upon. The early majority phase was driven for agility, but as we continue to go, and we've heard things like 50%, 60% cost reductions, we know that's an important element, but it's more about retooling an entire system so that it can respond to moving consumer demand, optimize across performance and efficiency. What is a Super Bowl in production value versus lesser content that has narrower audiences? Then the addition of 5G, which is this massive, massive investment, the acquisition of spectrum, the delivery of all the infrastructure, how it's going to change experiences. And then ultimately, just like our cars, like everything else, we are moving towards an automated function. And the primary way that will happen, software will be integrated through a series of AI ML engines, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So just to put us in a bit of a level set, and you can see this within 2019 to 20, which is a very ironic time that the chasm hit right around the time everything went quiet. First and foremost, this is cost driven, but it's cost driven without any compromise in quality. What it really means is how much faster can a media company bring its content and address and connect to its core audience that advertising are based against, subscriptions are based against, international programming drives all types of viewership, and that you can narrow cast audiences in ways and do pop-up channels and sub-brands in a way that would have been physically impossible with legacy infrastructure architectures. It needs to be much more simplified and abstracted so that people can click buttons and have insights, red light, yellow light, green light, be able to draft and manage their workflows. But it can't ever break the mantra and the code of broadcast. And that means we started at 4 nines, we're at 5 nines, and depending on your architecture, 6 and 7 nines is well within the realm. We've seen in certain 5G hybrid models where 0 downtime was the objective. Those are obviously slightly different, but the whole point is this is not fantasy, but today. And from this flexibility and from the idea that I have virtualized my operations, infrastructure, and other parts, I can monetize and bring these things together in ways that would have been impossible in a 10 or 20-year-old television that led even over 5. And we've gone from live linear, we've added in a lot of VOD assets, a la Netflix, we all know, but the inclusion and the CAGR, that of the growth rate that's coming in on live, this is what television has been, and this is where television will amalgamate as a total offering. Taking from our good friends, Democraft, but wanted to point out, if you were to see where the money is the highest priority across our industry, it's the cloud services, investment in cloud technology, evidenced by the success of AWS, evidenced by Google, Azure, and all of our normal public providers as well as private. And how does one upgrade that infrastructure for IP-based operations? Because this infrastructure change has operational and divisional change. The fact that news and sports live in 2 different worlds functionally as a workflow, they're merely a matter of production value. If we look at this, one needs to consolidate the infrastructure and manage this across newer network topologies, rotating different network topologies, multi-CDN, multi-cloud, all of these things, and in concert, and interoperated in a way that was much more difficult because the core of our business is video. Things need to dynamically scale up and scale down. We see all types of sports that range from Premier League to the NHL, et cetera, where infrastructure will be available as needed and no longer there when not needed. This means because you're running this with software, you have a much stronger operational control plane and ways to have single panes of glass so that an operator can see things and understand what's an exception, what's different, invoke things as needed, but ensure that you're hitting broadcast parts. And meanwhile, as we know, we can't all be in the building. We're all not on any given control room. We might not be in a truck. All of this has to be accessible for anywhere at any time on any device. If you look at the adoption, media is definitely picking up and accelerating, and it's a pretty stark adoption rate from 2018, when 1 out of 4, to 2020, and we know where this number is now in 2021. We're past the 50% mark. So if you see that representative just set of logos, there is no question of the adoption. And very interestingly, the interaction amongst those entities, because once you've now freed up the infrastructure and the different parts, you've also freed up rights. You've freed up the way live linear paths and bouquets and buckets will be shared and monetized between the B2B partners long before they ever find their way down to the direct-to-consumer or the OTT models. And none of the requirements of broadcast have gone down, but the economics, the agility, and the ability to present a given set of content routines and portfolio, never has it been that important. The days of Thursday night at 8 o'clock are fairly long behind us. So we wanted to share this, but it's relevant because Amazon has really gone out of its way to dominate the M&E side. They've built a lot of tools, and we, Zixi, have been fortunate enough with them as a partner to migrate across this entire part. We're on Elemental Live. That's where this started. Zixi customers started to put AWS accounts and begin this sort of journey 3 and 4 years ago. Amazon Video, the operational element for Amazon Prime, picked Zixi for all the live contribution and aggregation. We introduced a control plane. Our entire control plane infrastructure of ZenMaster runs on AWS. We now then, with Media Connect, all of Media Connect is based on Zixi, and we support all protocol 17. And now we're integrating their portfolio with our entire suite of portfolios in the interest of making decisions by clients very simple, so that if they need to run real broadcast at any scale, very large to quite small, all the tool sets are there. We have done, and you will see Wavelength Zone, which is the 5G MEC and the interaction across that. CDI will show you what we're doing here, and contribution and dealing with high production and bit rates. And finally, as we get a little further with our good friends at reInvent, you'll see Elemental Link, us within the marketplace. That just makes it easy to commercially get there. And then finally, be dealing with live and routing in the coming year. The point of this curve is just more that all these clouds are now getting quite sophisticated in their end-to-end. That's a way overused phrase in our industry, and moving on. So covering quickly, but trying to stay mindful of my friend Eric. Talking about the business case for 5G. Here is a whole new network, a network that was never there. And why could we never have spectrum and do wireless? Well, we certainly were bonding. People like LiveU have been doing a great job with bonding, internet, Wi-Fi for many years. But this is a new B2B structure. And most people thought about 5G in terms of my phone service and pieces. We would have expected that it was going to be within contribution, production, and acquisition. But our first main client, that you will see the announcement quite shortly, it's been tested for over a year in a pilot production, is going to 500 MSOs. This loss of that spectrum and the amount of money that's gone in there, that graph on the right shows that SES and Intelsat, with their market caps and where they were 28 billion. But when the spectrum auction occurred, it was 81 billion. So these become very interesting data points just to highlight the value of the assets and the future and things that could be of that nature. So what is this big business case for television, and why does media and entertainment care? You're going to hear MEC until you're dead. Once upon a time known as mobile edge compute, now thoroughly referred to as multi-access edge compute. It's about how architectures will allow acquisition and entry into a network as close to the edge as physically and physically possible, but also on the distribution side, and then being able to see those signal paths and workflows in between there. Mobility, you just went from, is an iPhone the same thing that you had for a production rig and a production truck? We're going to see a lot of different experiments around that. We've seen 4K UHD at 20 megabit HEVC. It's stunningly beautiful. That's going to give producers different tool sets in their hands of how they want to create and monetize their products. All of these broadcasters have this infrastructure that's going to go. And then you're going to see, as you get to the quality of experience, which is on a B2B level, the quality of service, what are my uptimes? How does all this run in a virtualized way? And then how am I going to take this and make new content that I can monetize, which is going to be everything from venue to in venue and all of that. This lives under the case to IP because you can't do this if you don't live in an IP that could go from something from the internet to fiber, to 4G LTE, to 5G as it goes advanced. There are 5 C's in the 5G. There's content, someone has to have it. Someone needs to either creating something or trying to deliver it. There is a cloud, and there's not just the regular cloud, but the specialized zone of the cloud within the MEC. The carriers and the backbones, the companies like Verizon have spent $20 billion in building out that infrastructure. And having that radio area network and wherever it is deployed so they can get there. And this needs to occur and is occurring as we speak because we're living and breathing it. These are going to be the transformative experiences that excite consumers and move them into the new models of monetization as we, the television industry, continue our evolution for the past 100 years. Won't go too far because I know I'm probably tough on time. This is 5G, multiple use cases, looking at contribution, distribution, but you'll see experiences and you will see, as you saw, automation, healthcare, and the military. Proving that it's real, but wanting to save production. This is an architecture for zero downtime. And then finally, knowing we're getting here, we're going towards AIML. Data is the oil of the information age. Machine learning, artificial intelligence are going to become the critical parts. Everything here needs to be automated. We're all going to move our way towards the autonomous vehicle. You can't manage that much data. We need to visualize. I don't need to see what's wrong. I need to see what's right. I need to see just what's wrong and be able to action it. I need to be able to react very instantly, know which resources to deploy, have better root cause analysis, and then ultimately the need for agility. So I can use those analytics to point them at places and just saying this autonomous is a journey. And I'm mindful of my other people, so I don't need to repeat on that, but I just wanted to share the final part. You're going to start seeing data visualization across a much broader spectrum than we, the industry, have seen. Information will be flowing into systems like Zixi. It will be flowing out of systems like that. And software definition will become the critical part to make sure that there's a fabric that connects all of that together.
Excellent. Excuse me. Excellent. Thanks so much, Eric. That was a terrific walkthrough of both IP transport broadly and 5G specifically. I still love that 5C slide. You showed that back in a 5G panel this spring, and I had a number of people afterwards say, "Oh, now I get it." I
appreciate that. Wanted to leave some room in the back end for my fine friends.
Absolutely. So thanks again. And with that, I'd like to bring Mike Flathers from Signiant on. Mike, good to see you.
Hi, Eric. Nice to see you again, too.
And, you know, out of the 3 speakers this session, you know, the first 2 focus primarily on live. Signiant doesn't focus as much on live, but what the thread that connects them all, or certainly the thread that connects you and Zixi, is the emphasis on software versus hardware. And we'll get to that, particularly in our second question that we have lined up. But just, you know, people I think know that Signiant moves large files, but what's new at Signiant that our listeners and viewers should know about?
Yeah, good question. You know, we have, obviously have, a history of being able to move data really fast and over challenge connections and so forth. And by the way, I think you'd be surprised at how much we actually have to do with live events as well. You know, it just so happens for a lot of these, live workflows, we might be moving, multi-bit rate files and things like that. But and then also growing file support for, certainly, some of the integrations we have, coming out of, live capture devices and that kind of thing as well. But We've got a lot going on, like I said, we're kind of anchored in our transfer technology, but we've been taking a stance here, recently, moving, we would like to say, beyond file transfer. And because we touch a lot of the data and files that are being moved, we have access to them. And so we can actually do a lot with those, if, the customers, allow us to, if you will. Certainly, we're not going to touch files you're moving if you don't want us to. But for example, we acquired a company earlier this year called Less Pain. You've probably heard about a small team out of Germany that had some technology that we're calling Media Engine, which is kind of allows us to deal with media assets, professional camera format things directly off camera cards and manipulate things, process things quite a bit. We're actually integrating that technology into the Signiant platform. So it's not just about the movement of the data, but it's like, okay, so if we're moving it now, we know where that data is in a distributed fashion. We know how to access it. We know we can grab metadata from it. We can generate proxies. The list goes on. So in short, instead of moving the content, a lot of times we can just deal with the content in place, right? So
Sure.
That's saving time. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks for clarifying that, and pardon me for underselling the degree to which Signiant is involved in live workflows. You called this presentation or our discussion modern media workflows with SaaS building blocks. So let's talk about the first piece of that. Let's talk about modern media workflows, particularly how they're changing in the cloud area. We're not moving things and connecting things with coax and BNC connectors anymore. Instead, it's APIs and scripts. It seems to me that would have a profound effect on the skills required and on the overall approach to media management. How are you seeing media companies embrace or work through this change?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So first of all, there are our customers, but then there's the partner aspect as well, and we have a pretty robust partner ecosystem. And I kind of like to say now, as opposed to us saying, oh, we move data really fast and that's the only thing that we do, is we connect things, right? So to your point, APIs and SDKs that provide higher level capabilities are becoming more and more important, especially with cloud workflows today and cloud native offerings that people have. We have heavy focus on our SaaS products. We have Media Shuttle for system to person interaction. Then we have something called Jet, which is really more system to system type of transfers for those automated workflows. They both have API sets around them. This Media Engine that I mentioned that also has an API. But yeah, the skills are have changed quite a bit. But it's not just raw development skills that are necessary. It's really that kind of innovative. How can I put things together? How can I connect part A to part B? For example, Telestream just released Vantage 8.1, which actually has a direct API level, Media Shuttle integration built into it, so you can actually access portions of Media Shuttle from within the Telestream, the Vantage user interface, and carry out actions against Media Shuttle. We continue to add enterprise features, and that's where some of the skill sets start, the bar starts climbing up and up and up, because you have to do things like to be able to configure things to traverse firewalls and DMZs and so forth. So I would say it's a combination of kind of cloud prowess in addition to a lot of traditional IT type of skills, IP networking skills and so forth. So it is getting interesting, but and I don't know, I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about some of these higher level building blocks, but that is a concept that is really important as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, yeah, let's talk about those building blocks now. Of course, Signiant sells full stack products, but those products are often pieces or building blocks in much larger, even more complex workflows. Where do you see Signiant's role in this new era?
Yeah, like I said, just this whole concept of, connecting things, people, traditionally have had to deal with, the lower level APIs. So, a lot of times developers, when creating product, think of APIs, these days as just, a pure set of REST APIs, and you carry for this portion of the user interface, I have to have an API A and then API B and API C. But we're stepping back and kind of taking a look at these things, and I don't know, take something as simple as a fan out workflow. Yes, you could take and code to just all the individual lower level APIs, but we're looking at things like, well, what if we had an API that allowed you to define a complex fan out workflow through configuration as opposed to all code? And there's some really interesting things you can do that with structured payload and that kind of thing, and even make the transition between between traditional tools that might seem arcane, things like spreadsheets and things like that, but you can almost kind of help maybe people who are used to defining things and manually configuring, in what might be considered old style, to kind of bridge that gap between the old and the new.
Sure. You mentioned partners a little bit already, but let's talk a little bit more about that. It seems like Signiant is taking a more active role with your partners. And who are some of those partners, and what kind of role are you taking with them? How has your approach changed?
Yeah, so I'd say we're stepping up our game big time with regard to integration capabilities. Not they haven't been there, but the emphasis is there in a larger way, and so we have quite a few partners. I already mentioned Telestream. We have people like Open Drives and Avid, and I mean the list goes on and on and on. And then what we really want to make sure that we do is allow things, like I said, to be connected together, almost like connecting a hose, right? Since we're moving the data, so we want to be able to allow the data things to flow easy. Like I mentioned, metadata extraction, for example, with one of the capabilities that we have here that we're building into our platform. We don't want to be the authoritative source for all of that information. Of course, we want to pass along and have access to it, but because we actually control those storage endpoints, or at least have access to those storage endpoints, whether they be cloud, on-premise, hybrid type environment, we can help people actually find those assets and pass those along, the pipeline, if you will, for these workflows, and allow it to be that metadata and other types of information to be stored in the asset management system of your choice, for example.
Sure. Can you provide some real world examples of places where Signiant and other products acted as building blocks in successful workflows?
Yeah, so there's one that was kind of interesting, and there's an article that is out there somewhere, the marketing asset, from Signiant. It's actually an article that I wrote, and it's been quite useful. We're integrating with Slack. So if you can imagine a situation where I'm trying to find these assets, or you're in a live event, and someone is calling out saying, where did these assets actually get here, or did they get there? Where did these exist? So we actually, through an API integration with our Media Shuttle product, we actually wrote a little Slack bot that you could actually query and say, where does this file exist? And it would go out and query storage endpoints and return back and say, it exists here, and here's its checksum, and here's a thumbnail if you want, and all within Slack. So anybody that's that is listening on that channel, for example, can actually see what's going on. You're not having to pass email back and forth, or spend a lot of time with verbal communications on a comm channel or something like that. So that's I think a good example.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You mentioned APIs earlier, and with this model, APIs need to be a first order operation and not an afterthought. So tell me about Signiant's approach to APIs and how that fits into the overall strategy.
Yeah, well, certainly, we want to be able to make sure that we can do anything that you can do from the user interface, from the GUI in our products, you can do via API. That's super important. So of course that means thinking API first. Like I mentioned, there's also the concept of efficiency. So it's not we could leave it up to the end user to try and figure out the best way to make a set of API calls to carry out a certain workflow. But again, these higher level building blocks are something we're focusing on. So it not only allows gives you, it's almost like I'm baking a cake, right? And I have the ingredients for this cake. Soup to nuts with for not on the cake, but frosting and so forth. But I can try and put some all together myself. But wouldn't it be nice if the frosting was pre-made and the cake with layers were already baked there, and all you had to do is make it look pretty? That's what we're seeing from a lot of customers. They want to use our core technology, but they want to be able to put the finishing touches on it, if you will.
Sure. As we wrap things up, let's look to the future a little bit. Can you give us a sneak peek of anything that might be coming down the pike in 2022? And what are you most excited about looking forward to the next year?
Yeah, well, certainly the integration capabilities. I mean, as Chief Solutions Officer, that's kind of my role, here is to, provide solutions. We're actually working with several customers and partners to kind of, create some informal, working groups to talk about our, common, workflow problems with today's age. Like I said, connecting things together. I mentioned, the stuff going on with Media Engine and Less Pain. I would say I'm really excited, this week, because I think I'll come right up to the edge of saying something here. Stay tuned for a major announcement from us, probably by the end of this week, if not early next week, with regard to getting pretty close to some other partners. So we're expanding our integration capabilities quite a bit.
Excellent. Good to hear. Well, thanks so much, Mike. Appreciate your time. Perhaps you could follow your other presenters' leads and put your contact information or a contact in the chat. And that was a great summary of what Signiant's doing. And what's interesting is I look at, again, back at the last 3 presentations we've had here, is how, some of these lines are blurring. As I said, I apologize for perhaps painting Signiant in a corner about moving files and VOD assets when it's not quite that clear cut anymore.
Yep. It's not. I mean, and I think this is a necessary thing for all of us to move beyond where we were and not be complacent and get out of our comfort zone a bit.
For sure. Well, thanks again to Scott from LiveU, to Eric from Zixi, and to Mike from Signiant for this Innovation Hour. Thanks again to all of our other sponsors as well. Conviva, Limelight, Signiant also is a diamond sponsor of Streaming Media West Connect, and Video Guys for sponsoring this entire week. And thanks to the audience for tuning in. Speaking of the audience, Susan Tedrick is the winner of the Amazon gift card. So congratulations, Susan, and keep your eye out on your email. That wraps up day 2 of Streaming Media West Connect. And we'll kick things off tomorrow at 10 a.m. with a panel about how to choose a content delivery network strategy. So long, and see you tomorrow.
NDI November. NDI products and NDI guests, including Dr. Cross to kick everything off November 2nd. Start watching Tuesdays at 3 p.m.
Register now at videoguys.com to make sure you don't miss any of our NDI November webinars. Registering will give you a chance to win one of our giveaways, including a HuddleCam HD Pro EPTZ webcam with NDI, a Telestream Wirecast Pro license for Windows or Mac, a BirdDog Flex of your choice, the New Tech University NDI class and exam, or a copy of the unofficial guide to NDI.
In this era of streaming video, we are pioneers, helping make your stories more vibrant. Conviva lives in billions of apps on devices all over the world, measuring trillions of data points each day to provide real-time insights for your content, ads, and social. Conviva. Every stream, every screen, every second.